For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lee Biggenden. I'm one of the co-founders of Nepos Technologies. We are a data services integrator here in the UK, working with customers to, I guess, define, deploy, and in some cases manage their, I guess, 2.0 infrastructure, if you like, whether that's public, cloud, private, hybrid, and anywhere in between. Joined today presenting with us is Jake Tame from Nutanix and Kev Moxie from Nasuni, and they're gonna talk to you a little bit about what those guys do and how they fit in the overall story as well. And then they'll hand back to me towards the end. We'll close it out, give you a little bit of a use case, a customer example of where we've done this sort of thing before and how we kind of help customers. Bit of Q&A, and then we're joined at 5 by someone from a company called the Fromagerie, who are near Borough Market, and they're going to talk us through the smelly cheese, which will be nice. So without further ado, so as I say, my name's Lee. I'm one of the co-founders here. We're a UK-based company, or UK, based company. And our role really with customers is to help them solve what is normally a complex data challenge. And that ranges, right, anything from genomic sequencing to know your customer, to data governance, and a whole heap of other areas as well as part of the mix. Typically, we're quite consulting led. So a lot of the work we do with customers tends to be in this kind of transformational space. So it's all about really making sure, and hopefully we've got some customers on today who might, who will hopefully say nice words about us. But yeah, it's all about for us helping our customers to get to the right decision around kind of their transformational journey around infrastructure and data services. A lot of what we do is consulting led because quite often organizations tend to know where they want to get to, right? You tend to know what the end state wants to look like. You know where you are now, but there's a big gray area in between. And more often than not, organizations don't have enough time, resource, in some cases knowledge about the markets, that the other technology options that are out there and available to them, to be able to make a choice really. So you end up doing the same thing you've always done. Our job really is to help you plot through that, to help you execute on those strategies thereafter, and as I say, in some cases manage it. That approach generally has served us well over the last 10 years nearly. Seems like a long time. And actually, from a growth perspective, that's been great for us. Our customers stick with us. We have a very high customer retention rate. Most of our customers have been with us for a long time, and our compound growth as a result of that is a little over 700% over the last 3 years compound in terms of revenue. And that's despite COVID. I think we were fortunate enough during the whole pandemic thing to actually increase in size, increase in revenue, increase in headcount, and we're still going. Which is really, really super positive from all angles, really, for our customers and us. They know they're safe, right? And I think as well, you know, that growth comes through the fact that we're really focused in on what we do, and we know what we don't do as well, which is really important. And it led us as well to be picked up in the FT 1000 in the top 1,000 fastest growing companies in Europe this year. So what do we do? What areas do we work in? There's kind of 3 core components to what we do as a business generally, broadly speaking. One of which is a bit more new, is around that kind of data analytics, AI, ML type area. I would say a newer subject area for us and for our customers, to be fair. But we are getting more and more involved in those sorts of areas of work. Another which throughout actually the pandemic, we've seen the biggest rise in is around data governance and compliance. So that's kind of discovery, classification, and proper data management across the piece, whether it's structured or unstructured systems, and enforcement of privacy policy as part of that. But what we're talking about today, which is probably more in line with where we started as a business and kind of, I guess, our bread and butter, if you like, is all around that data processing storage piece. So how do we leverage new, different approaches to infrastructure technologies to deliver on what our customers are looking for? And that's typically reduction in cost, increase in agility, increase in ability to scale. Quite often that scaling comes from the fact that, you know, as businesses generally, we want to do more with our data. And as a result, we're storing more of it. It's more fragmented, it's more distributed, but we kind of need that data to be able to drive value from it. And that's what we're all striving for. So that's a real big part of our portfolio and what we do and what we work with our customers on. From an engagement perspective, that's an end-to-end approach for us. So we do offer strategic consulting around those things in what we call our smart services, all the way through to products and project delivery. So, and then all the way through to fully managed services at the other end. So I think where we probably differ from some other people is the fact that we're flexible in that approach. So if you look at the likes of Royal Bank of Scotland, for example, we did some work with those guys, which is purely consulting focused. We have the other end of the scale where you look at organisations like Genomics England, where we've done that, but we've tracked that all the way through to the fully managed service at the end of it. Our belief is that we should be flexible in that approach. So we want to give our customers choice and we want to give them the right choice. And that approach has led us to work with some leaders in their field. So if you look at the architecture, engineering, construction space, you've got the likes of PRP, WSP, Stepnell, who are one of the oldest construction firms in the UK, you know, and some Atkins, some others, not on this slide. And then you've got the likes of Dentsu and WPP and Omnicom, who are leaders in the advertising space, financial services, etc., etc. The thing that's common across all of our customers is that they've all kind of wanted to do something different. They've all recognised the fact that doing the same thing they've always done is not going to get them to their end state. It's not going to get them where they want to do. And what they've looked for is a partner that can help them through that. And that's essentially what we do, right? Now, when it comes to cloud, which is what we're talking about today predominantly, and the infrastructure piece, I thought before I hand over to the rest of the guys, you know, it'd be nice to touch on some of the trends, some of the predictions that we're seeing at the moment and what we're seeing generally in the market, just to set a little bit of context there. I find it quite interesting and probably in equal parts frustrating sometimes. We see a lot of comment about unclouding, cloud repatriation, all of these kind of horror stories, if you like, that says cloud is bad. Now, quite often it's not really. Quite often it's the fact that, you know what, maybe it's not the right workloads in the right place. Maybe that's the problem. And for us, it tends to be more about making sure that we help our customers to put the right things in the right places, so then they don't have these horror stories, right? And you kind of got both sides of the scale. You've got the likes of your Michael Dell out there, you know, it's all about cloud repatriation. Let's bring it all back. It needs to come back. And you've got the other side where there's some great stories, and particularly through COVID, of organizations that have leveraged cloud to really innovate in a really short space of time. But it comes down to putting the right things in the right place. So Moderna, for example, a lot of their drug development as part of their kind of COVID response, if you like, and generating their vaccine was done in public cloud because it gave them the scale and the speed to work. So I think there's really a fine balance, and actually what we're seeing, and that's kind of backed up by the stats, is that most organisations are either committed to or interested in a hybrid strategy, right? It can't be all or nothing. It needs to be hybrid. You need to be in a position where you don't lock yourself out of a choice that your business is going to regret because, you know, the platforms that are in place aren't open. They don't have the right connectivity. They don't support that flexible deployment model. Equally, a lot of organizations are still expecting to have a large, meaningful amount of the data infrastructure on-premise over the next 3 years. Now, those stats come from an ESG report, linked on the slide, happy to share it afterwards if anyone wants it. It was actually commissioned by Equinix, I think. But realistically, those things are kind of leading to a hybrid multi-cloud strategy, which is what most people are looking for. By the same token, the amount of revenue generated in hybrid cloud in particular is on a huge increase. So it's really pointing to that trend that we're looking for a hybrid approach. We want the best of both worlds. We want flexibility, but we don't want to lock ourselves out, right? That's kind of where we're going. And that's the reason why today we brought together the guys at Nacini and the guys at Nutanix. They're two of our key partners, but they also deliver their solutions or their platforms both on-premise and in cloud in a hybrid model. And that's kind of why they're quite important for us. They're platforms that give us the flexibility to choose the right location for our customers. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is kick over to Jake from Nutanix, and Jake's going to walk you through the Nutanix positioning around that hybrid cloud model.
You need private cloud in order to do hybrid cloud, right? So yeah. And if you think about private cloud, I'm hopefully going to be positioned well enough for this. If you think about that private cloud, that on-premise infrastructure, we see this as two forms. You've got HCI, hyperconverged infrastructure, which we'll talk about in a second, but we've got traditional three-tier legacy architecture where you've got multiple building blocks that you need to look after. So be it SAN fabric, plus networking stack, plus virtualization stack, and the physical tin. All of that requires specialist skills, potentially silos, teams within organizations, very careful integration of that. Different vendors, so you've got lots of different support contracts to manage and look after, but most of all, it's complex, right? Long planning cycles, the maintenance modes, the upgrade cycles, the compatibility between specific versions of something, and we see that a lot of time is spent on infrastructure. And that's one of the reasons why people choose the public cloud, right? Is you don't have to look after anything. You just go and say, create me a virtual machine, and you've got a virtual machine created. That is ultimately what we want to deliver from a Nutanix perspective in a private cloud, but also hybrid. And you think about what time is spent on this legacy infrastructure on an application perspective, 20% time roughly spent on the business. If we can convert IT from being a drain of spend to the business, which is typically just a bottom line, and delivering more value to the business, they're more likely to spend on IT. So what's HCI? So HCI terminology was invented by Nutanix 2009. It's basically pizza boxes, and we've wrapped around a software-defined architecture on commodity x86 hardware. And we form a cluster of 3 servers as a minimum, and that can infinitely scale. The concept of that is web scale engineering, which is how the public cloud has delivered their services. And the benefits of that are tech debt write-off, so you can write a lot of tech debt off very quickly. You can run new and old applications on HCI. You can support multiple customers' applications quicker and faster. You can develop new initiatives internally, right? Nutanix is all developer-friendly, automation-friendly to enable you to do more. Improved UI to enable a much simpler day-to-day operations and management stack. instead of having to transverse multiple screens and planning, right? We want to give you a lot of time back, which is a lot of where we see a lot of savings, so that you spend 20% of your time on infrastructure and 80% of time on a business. And we've got TCO that stacks up on those metrics, but ultimately that 20% of time will be click upgrade, and we'll upgrade the platform for you. Maybe a VM configuration, install and upgrade new potential products within the Nutanix stack. So we're all about delivering value to business, and the way to do that is simplify what you've got. And then it's a case of how can we accelerate cloud journey, and we see this in like 4 phases, and Lee sort of touched on this. It's you need to modernize your infrastructure, but also applications. We can do phase 1 very quickly, right? The migrate away from what you've got now to Nutanix can be done very, very fast. Like we're talking rack stack configure in a day, migration started on day 2, and depending on how much data you've got, you could be migrated by the weekend. That mindset of lift and shift goes away overnight with Nutanix, right? You just expand and remove old and all that sort of stuff. Everything we do from a Nutanix perspective is API driven. So we can automate IT operations from VM creations to VM management in the cloud. Upgrades can be scheduled, right? We want to automate IT operations because that removes errors. It simplifies day to day, and a lot of what you do manually can be automated. Then it's integrate into the public cloud. So we have integration directly into AWS, GCP, and Azure from a native perspective, but also we have where we start doing a unification of a public cloud and private cloud by giving you a single software stack that can manage both on-premise data centers, but also manage public cloud bare metal instances with Nutanix software on top. So you get the same interface then managing both your private cloud and your public cloud. If there is any questions at any point, please just do shout, raise your hand, one glass in the air, whatever it is that you need to get my attention. So we can do a lot of these phases all within a single management pane. And that can be single site, that could be worldwide deployments. But ultimately, it's a journey that organizations go on. And we're still finding a lot are on phase 1, where they want to get to some form of cloud adoption. And we can speed that up very, very quickly. So we're speaking about HCI. What actually is that HCI concept? It forms of, let's remove the SAN requirement. Let's remove the SAN fabric requirement, condense down back into a pizza box, x86 commodity hardware. We've got lots of vendor support. It's about 16 vendors that we support. And we integrate, which way am I going? We integrate compute, storage, virtualization, networking, security, right? And we do that through software. And we call that AOS, so Acropolis Operating System. We install that onto a virtual machine itself that runs on each of our nodes, a node being a server and various configurations in each of these hardware vendors. We do have Robo, a 1-2 node, but ultimately majority of customers do 3 nodes minimum, which is how we form a cluster, right? You've got N+1 and you've got resiliency. But that installation process I mentioned before is very, very simple. And we hide the management of storage, the configuration, the resiliency. It's all done automatically for you so that you don't have to worry about that tin, right? You just worry about the applications and the virtual machines. We support multiple hypervisors and we make those invisible. So we've got a bundled in hypervisor called AHV. It's based on KVM. KVM's been around for a long time. ESX we support underneath Nutanix as well. Hyper-V, but we won't go there. And we support running containers on top of Nutanix as well. We have our own container platform, but you can run any other container platform as well. So we make that hidden, and we make that hidden via an interface called Prism. So you get that simplification of cloud-like experience. So you go to cloud, you just create a virtual machine. That's ultimately what we want to do in Nutanix. You go to Nutanix GUI, you create a virtual machine. All of the advanced tuning and configuration management is done in the back end for you, so you don't have to do that. The way we handle resiliency is very unique to us. We are the only vendor that does it this way, because we patent it, right? It's in the patents, nutanixbible.com, and you can learn about our entire architecture from that. The way we handle resiliency is the CVMs themselves, the controller virtual machine, runs on every node. That handles metadata, cluster configuration, and they're all talking to each other over that network. As we do data writes, and this is the same from day 0 to day whenever, it's all done from the GUI and it's all handled for you. When you create a virtual machine, we're best placed that. As the data is getting written down, the data is written next to that virtual machine on that local node, and we replicate that to another node. We see how the data is spread around there. That data is called RF2 replication, so 2 copies of our data. And we spread that data across multiple nodes. So we write locally on one node and we distribute the secondary copies across many nodes. We do this for performance and resiliency. So we always want to make sure that we've got a fault tolerant data set where we can recover with no disruption. So we could lose the node, we're going to power up those virtual machines on another node without any data loss, and they've got their data local again. We can do non-disruptive upgrades in the stack without any user interruption as well. And it's all because of this distributed storage plane that we have. And this goes to show you how that all fits together. So we eliminate the SAN, we have a single storage pool, the CVM's running on every node. We can mix and match node types, but staying with the same hardware family, i.e. HPE or NX hardware, which is our own brand. As long as we stay within that, we can mix hardware types, mix storage configurations as part of that process. All your typical enterprise class features from a data perspective and from a virtual machine perspective we have into the platform. We tag this along as AHV. AHV is a Acropolis hypervisor that sits as installed on the node. That's included, right? So this can eliminate your VMware costs, ultimately, your ESX licensing costs. It's native virtualization. It's built for our AOS software stack. So we control the end-to-end data path, and it's optimized for web scale engineering for HCI. This same technology, AHV, is what we use to install our software on bare metal in AWS and Azure. Right, it's performance optimized. We've got virtual networking stack, full DR capabilities built in as part of that. So it gives you a true single stack, single vendor solution to reduce a lot of your pain today, complexity, saves time, it saves money. This is what that looks like. So you have that private cloud. There is still a need for private cloud, right? If you think about known workloads, persistent workloads that are running all the time, this is guaranteed to be cheaper to run on premises. Burst workloads, potentially DR in the cloud that's spun up when you need it, right? That is great for public cloud workload, right? If you think about deep, dense storage, we can do that on-prem if you need it. But you think about Glacier or blob storage, right? Very, very cold storage, very, very cheap. We can still consume that. But if you think about running 2 clusters in the cloud as Nutanix software, we have bare metal in AWS and dedicated hosts in Azure. We install that Nutanix cloud software. You then have a multi-hybrid cloud environment, all driven through the same web interface, using in the cloud environments their native networking stack. So you can still talk to all of the existing services that they have without additional complexity. And I'm talking, we can provision an AWS cluster in less than 2 hours, and actually we can do about 2,000 desktops in that time period as well. So from a delivery perspective, we can install Nutanix very, very quickly in the cloud environments. And then that seamless experience, seamless migration across cloud. If you think about cloud lock-in, right, going to Azure and consuming Azure natively and then wanting to move out, it's going to be very difficult. The same with AWS, the same with GCP. But what we're giving you is a private cloud and a hybrid cloud on the same platform where you can choose to move workloads around very, very easily. So think about it as a private cloud in public cloud, private cloud experience in public cloud. We support all our services in that aspect. So from a business continuity, security, consolidation of data, any application, automation, all of that's driven by Prism, so that we can give you a seamless operation across both environments, both hybrid, cloud, private cloud, public cloud. You don't actually need Nutanix on-premise deployment to consume Nutanix in the public cloud, right? And we can migrate you from existing public cloud environments to Nutanix software stack in the public cloud. And that itself can typically save you money as well, depending on your public cloud bill. But ultimately, whatever the use case, be it VDI, databases, enterprise apps, containers, dev test automation, we can support that on top of Nutanix. Why do we see ourselves as the market leader? So part of that is software stack itself, like how simple we make things. We are the top HCI vendor. VMware is up there as well. But when you compare the technologies, there is a lot of differences. From a Forest perspective, we're up in the right-hand corner, right? This is based on industry knowledge, reports that are done, customer success, retention rates, right? We're in the quadrants. I thought I amended this. Lee, I had the one I sent you had 20,000 customers on it, didn't it?
Sorry.
We are up to 20,130 customers as of the last quarter, with a 96% retention rate. So that means customers that have bought Nutanix, they've renewed their software. That leads us to the Net Promoter Score. Net Promoter Score being on a sliding scale of -100 to +100. And it's normally when you get a text message from the bank that says, how would you rate us 0 to 10? That's effectively a Net Promoter Score. If you rate anything less than a 9 or a 10, that's going to detract from that +100 score. So for us to maintain a +90 for 6+ years, we've scored 9s and 10s on that annoying text message that comes through. And peer reviews from Gartner. So Gartner does analysis all the time. I think Jack's on the call, used to work at Gartner. We get consistently very good feedback from peer reviews of Nutanix. We've got lots of reference customers as part of that. So if anyone's thinking about it, needs a reference, we can find you one. I'm going to leave you with a little link. It's called nutanix.com/testdrive. This is available to anyone, existing or non-existing customers. And this gives you a little snippet into that cloud journey, be it private cloud, database as a service. Test Drive will give you access to an isolated environment where you can use Prism, test it out, get familiar with it. And there is actually a simulation or an environment that does that hybrid cloud. You get an on-prem, and you get a public cloud in AWS to test that seamless experience. So yeah, try that out. You can do it multiple times. You're not limited to once. Depending on which scenario you choose, it's like 2 to 4 hours from a usability perspective. And that's me. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Lee. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Kevin Moxey, the Regional Sales Manager for Nasuni here in the UK. Here to give you a brief introduction, 10-15 minutes. So Nasuni is really about transforming file storage infrastructure into a powerful cloud service that helps your business grow, save money, and reduce business risk from things such as ransomware due to our recovery capabilities. We've got customers starting from as little as 20 terabytes of file data. This slide is really to show that we've got some of the largest global organizations as customers that scale all the way up into the multi-petabytes of file and unstructured data. Again, this starts from single site up to hundreds of sites. We've been focused on this since our inception in 2008. We're now on version 9 of the code with 36 patents registered and deployed in over 12,000 customer locations. And whilst Nasuni is not a household name today, we've quietly become the file platform of choice for some of the world's largest companies. And that's really down to 3 common threads. So companies are coming to us to address file needs and file protection needs in ways that they can't get out of current solutions. And that's either from primary file infrastructure or traditional backups. As you can see here, the majority are coming from on-premise architectures. So we're replacing things like NetApp appliances, Windows file servers, Dell EMC Isilon platforms. And again, as you can see from some of the logos here, this really applies across all verticals and industries. So the problem statement really exists around traditional architectures and its complexity. We see multiple or many silos of infrastructure and resource, meaning several copies of your data. So you've got your primary storage platform, so the likes of your NetApps, your Isilon platforms. Then you need a separate stack completely for disaster recovery purposes. Then for long-term retention, you need separate backup solutions. So that's the backup software itself, but then its own dedicated infrastructure. So your media servers, your backup targets for disk and tape. This then gets kind of exacerbated when you start thinking about remote sites, which often need the local infrastructure there as well. We're seeing an increased globalization of workforces, so a growing need to share files between locations and different teams and users. And so the typical challenges associated with this, really, as you can see, it's pretty complex. It gets very expensive. It's pretty distributed as well, which provides a large attack surface for ransomware. So we're seeing ransomware becoming a growing threat, and it's now no longer a question of if, but when you're going to get attacked. And traditional backup solutions can take days, weeks, or longer to recover. And again, because we've got multiple solutions, we've got multiple different management points as well. And up until now, there hasn't really been an alternative viable option. But with the explosion of file data growth, which Gartner is predicting to triple by 2024, it's no longer viable to keep up with this same approach, either technically or commercially. So all the traditional storage vendors are kind of realizing these issues and offering lift and shift interim solutions that don't really address the inherent problems. They still have the same limitations of on-premise architecture. It's just running in a different data center location. So at Nasuni, we think there's a better way of doing things. Nasuni stands for NAS Unified. We set out to build a platform that allows customers to really converge all the elements of a file infrastructure. So by that, we're talking about your primary storage itself, so your NAS and your file servers, the backup, so you can have multiple copies of your data, version control, being able to go back to any version at any point in time quickly, DR in case a primary site goes down or offline, rapid ransomware recovery, plus even file synchronization across multiple locations. This is all delivered in one platform. So we did this by building UniFS, which is the first file system to live on object storage. No one else does that. And the real advantages of cloud object storage are, it's extremely durable, it's infinitely scalable, you're never going to run out of capacity, and it's extremely cost effective. It's the lowest cost form of cloud. So we cache file data out to the edge, and that's different as well. So instead of tiering data from a traditional system into object storage, we just cache the active data at the edge, which lets us put the performance where we need it. And these are edge appliances, which are lightweight VMs. So these will replace your full-size NAS and file servers, and they use the same protocols, so CIFS and NFS, that you are using today. And with this, you've now got one file system that your users can access and share from wherever they're working. Everything's shared in the cloud, and only the changes are synchronized out to the edge. So this allows us to take out the latency and delays from a traditional workflow. And this has traditionally been one of the previous barriers to moving file data to the cloud, is that latency. So this allows us to provide kind of the best of both worlds. We've got the robustness, the scalability, the cost effectiveness of cloud, but still maintaining that local-like performance for the users. And lastly, as we look at data protection, as data is written to the cloud, which is typically in 5 to 15-minute increments, we're creating a version timeline of that data that's read-only and immutable. So that means we're storing every version of a file as an immutable object. So we've got some of our early adopter Nasuni customers who've got a version history spanning back 12 years. So if you think about that, that's 5 to 15-minute snapshots stored in the cloud that can go back in time indefinitely. And we're capturing just the delta changes. We dedupe and compress it in the back end as well. So the overhead in storage utilization at the back end is minimal. Also, these edge appliances are stateless, which means if you lose one, you can just spin it back up either in the cloud or at another location very quickly. And again, to reiterate, this is all managed via a single management platform and console. So as we talk about data protection, think about what I've just talked about from the context of ransomware. So with Nasuni, instead of it taking days, weeks, or months to restore files, you can recover within minutes. So as I mentioned earlier, we store unlimited immutable snapshots that give you point-and-click recovery capabilities. So speaking with end users, we know that recovering from a ransomware attack is an operational nightmare, as it usually hits multiple locations at the same time. So sometimes it can be seen as easier and maybe cheaper as well to pay the ransom rather than recover from your backups. So we've seen, along with the rest of the industry, an uptick in customers getting hit with ransomware. To date, none of our customers have ever had to pay a ransom. You can see a few customer quotes here. Leo Daly is one of our architecture and engineering customers based in the US. So yeah, they were hit with ransomware, able to recover very quickly. Without Nasuni, they would have lost between 1 and 2 weeks worth of work. Also, we released a demo last week, I think it was, which showed restoring over 700 terabytes of files and over 1 million files in less than a minute, which I can share a link to as well. So I want to talk briefly about a case study customer of ours, Pernod Ricard. They're the world's second largest producer of wine and spirits. So they've got the likes of Absolute Vodka and Jameson's whiskey. They have a strategic growth plan based on 4 essentials, first of which is reducing cost and complexity through digital transformation. So by moving their file infrastructure into the cloud with Nasuni, they were able to provide secure, limitless file storage capacity and high performance file access across 26 locations, consolidating their existing hard to manage and hard to scale NAS platforms. And again, with our continuously versioning global file system, that eliminated the need for a traditional file backup, which is causing them slow recoveries and up to 7 days of downtime. So they were using on-premise architectures. It was based on NetApp appliances. One of their remote sites, they had an outage. They had a premium support contract in place, so the engineer turned up within the 4-hour allotment and replaced the hardware, got the appliance back up and running. But then they had to actually restore from their file backup in the cloud, and that took days. So by moving that workload into the cloud with Nasuni, and that was reduced down to minutes. So inherent in our design is the cost savings, which is due to our architecture utilizing cloud object storage at the back end. So the estimated business impact, or EBI, is a tool that we use to work in conjunction with yourselves and Nephos to build comparative cost models to outline not just estimated hard cost savings, but also productivity gains and operational efficiencies. We can then go through this with you in an interactive session, and to then see the workings behind these numbers and make any tweaks to the numbers in line with actual figures. This is designed to then become the internal business case justification for the project. I guess the final element is how we get you there. So as a company, we don't exist unless customers are renewing their contracts with us. We're a software as a service company. So it's all based on customer satisfaction. So I guess one of the things that's keeping companies from moving file data to the cloud is the fear of migration and moving to a new architecture. This is quite a different way of doing things traditionally. So it's all about ensuring that your entire transition is done smoothly and successfully according to your timeframes. So Nasuni and Nephos, we've got a huge amount of experience in delivering successful Nasuni deployments and migrations in many, many different environments. We do this day in, day out. So Nephos, our longest-standing partner in the UK, actually were selling our services or our product in the UK before we actually had a presence here. So yeah, they've got a huge amount of experience. And yeah, just to reiterate that point, we sell on annual subscriptions. So it's in our interest to ensure that our customers are happy with us. You can see some various metrics here. Existing customers highly recommend us, shown by some of these metrics. I think NPS came up on Jake's slide deck as well. I think the average for software as a service businesses is 41, so 89 is a top end. Again, peer insights, similar numbers to what Jake was talking about. And referenceability as well. So almost 20% of all of our customers are referenceable, which is extremely high. So I guess to summarize, there's kind of three key areas why customers are moving their file data to the cloud with Unsuni. It comes down to these three elements. So simplicity, scalability, and cost savings. So scalability, because we use typically cloud object storage at the back end, we're never going to run out of capacity versus traditional on-premise where you're going to run out of disk space, run out of the maximum disks or shelves you can add to a system. It's simple, right? So it's a single platform, single management GUI, with all the built-in backups and disaster recovery capabilities built in. And finally, cost savings. Typically, we see 50% cost savings versus traditional on-premise architectures. So these three things just summarize kind of why we're having so much success in the marketplace. That leads me to the end of my slides. So thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Kev. Appreciate that.
Cheers, Lee.
So I guess before we get into the cheese, I'm just going to close that out and kind of summarize and give you a little bit of an example as to where we're doing this and where we've done this in the past. As Kev said, we've worked with Unsuni and Nutanix for quite a long time now, and we've come across all sorts of use cases and weird and wonderful things. But we are also a public cloud partner as well, so we work with the likes of AWS and Azure quite regularly. So we've kind of seen quite a lot of different experiences from our customers' perspective. I thought it might be interesting to chat a little bit about why these initiatives can quite often fail. And quite often it all comes down to planning. We have a lot of, quite often we see a lot of issue around cost modeling out the right costs, understanding what can be moved, what should be moved, what shouldn't be moved. We have one customer, for example, on paper, it looked like they could migrate quite a lot of services into public clouds. You start digging into it, and if you look at these applications in isolation and not at a cluster level, it becomes really easy to get that wrong and kind of miss interactions between certain applications or applications that are particularly network sensitive, these kinds of things. Part of what we do as a business is to work with our customers to kind of work that out, really, and work out what the right fit is. One of our services that we deliver is a smart cloud strategy, as we call it. So it's effectively, it's independent of any one cloud platform, and it's designed really to give you a clear transition path, clear cost model, understand what workloads can and can't be moved, should and shouldn't be moved. Now, the reality is you could go to AWS and Azure and get them to do that for you, right? They would absolutely do that for you. The bit you miss is the fact that actually, unless you're moving everything lock stock, it doesn't give you a joined up answer, right? It doesn't give you an end-to-end answer that cuts across both on-premise and in cloud. And that's one of the things that we do slightly differently because we're able to bring both of those things in. It has a defined process that we run. So all the way through from scoping, I'm not going to touch on all of these independently, but all the way through from scoping to identifying the right candidates to migrate, architecture definition, cost modeling, as well as definition of kind of migration plan thereafter so that you've got a proper pathway. I wanted to give you a little bit of an example as to where we've done this before. Now, this example is for, they are a global publisher. They publish magazines, some quite big brand magazines. And we've been working with these guys for probably 4 or 5 years now. And what we've done in recent times is work with them on their hybrid cloud model. So for them, the business made a decision, partly driven by their market. You know, print publishing has not had a very good time of it, I think it'd be fair to say. Most of these organizations, like many others, are looking at digitization and how they drive more agility over how they deliver their workloads. And I think that's true of most companies, to be honest. You know, they're looking for ways of driving things more efficiently. And they've made a decision that they wanted to move certain things well, initially the call was, we want to move everything into cloud. The technology team on the ground was sort of saying, well, that's fine, but it's totally impractical and it's not going to work for us. So they asked us in to help build out the strategy and understand the options available to them. And that's what we did. What you see on the screen is kind of their end state. So what we've ended up doing through that smart cloud assessment process is, one, consolidate out the block storage environment. So they had a lot of old Dell compellent block storage, standard fiber channel network across the back of it. Everything's on premise, multiple sites replicated to each other. Like to Kev's point earlier, a lot of duplication and replication of data. The first stage that we ran through was an assessment of the current workloads, and we identified around 50% of the workloads that were on premise with a view to being good candidates to move into AWS, and that subsequently happened. The on-premise infrastructure we split into two aspects. The block workloads, so what is their VMware estate, we collapsed down the remaining 50% and pushed that onto Nutanix on-premise from a hyper-converged perspective. Now, Jake didn't touch on this, but basically Nutanix gives us the ability to move away from fiber channel and push straight into Ethernet. So actually we were able to simplify the network layer as well as part of that. From a sizing perspective, the overall outcome of that was that we effectively ripped out 75% of the rack space that they were consuming in their colo. So quite a big impact in that sense. And that was kind of the first phase, if you like. What we've also done there is take the file workload, and that's gone into Nasuni. So all of the file data, so it's creative content, Office documents, all those kinds of things that you'd expect, have been migrated off of what was Windows file servers sitting on block storage into Nasuni. That gave us a couple of benefits, and that's tiered into Amazon S3 for them as the object store. Gave us a couple of benefits. One, the way that it works is typically, if you look at the profiler data, maximum 20% of that file workload will be hot. So you don't need to provide a full volume of storage. Let's say you've got 100 terabytes, for example. You don't need to put 100 terabytes on the floor on really expensive disk. The idea is that we size that, we cache down locally the hot data sets, the 20% for argument's sake. All of the data is resident in clouds in their scenario, could be an on-premise object store, but effectively that reduces the cost and the footprint of the on-premise infrastructure. We can actually deploy those Nasuni filers in public cloud or as virtual machines on Nutanix as well. All of that file data is pushed into the object store. Gives us another benefit in that we don't need to back the file data up separately because Nasuni versions it. So we have a net impact on the cost of block backup by reducing that footprint. Because all we've got to back up is the VMs. Now, for this particular customer, what we've then done is rather than put that across two on-premise data centers, we've then taken that out. We're using, in their case, Veeam as the block backup, and we're pushing Veeam into AWS. AWS is then used for long-term data retention for those backups and as a DR target. So there's a lot of cool scripting you can do around that. There's also some pretty cool stuff that the Nutanix have as part of their Calm portfolio that enables you to do some runbook automation to kind of simplify that overall process. So what we've ended up doing is reducing one of the data centers out because we don't need it anymore. We've streamlined the on-premise footprint, moved the things we can move into public cloud, and we've given them a hybrid cloud experience. The net impact of that is nearly 70% cost saving over 7 years. So for an organization that was looking to drive agility, we've got a common platform on the hypervisor layer. So actually we can start moving workloads between cloud and on-premise a lot easier. We streamlined the backup, we've reduced the on-premise footprint, and we shut a data center. All of that has no impact on the user. So they're using standard SMB and FS connectivity for their file workloads. They're using virtualized applications as they would do anyway. So actually, there's very little to no change on the end user. There's a massive benefit to IT, and a big benefit in terms of agility generally. That's essentially what we do and what we help customers do. So I'll open up for any questions, but ultimately, in terms of, I guess, what's next, if there's anything here that's caught your eye, that's driven interest, that you want to explore a little bit further, there's a load of options available to you. We have a team of engineers and consultants in-house that are more than happy to have conversations about how we can potentially engage, what we can do, how we can help. So really, the door's open, and no doubt one of the team will be in touch with you in due course after this, once you've got over the cheese hangover. But yeah, so aside from that, I guess what I'd like to do is open up if there's any questions, if anyone's got anything they want to ask.